It's already been sold, and Scott Shepherd owns it, and then the other one I'm still doing. And that all comes under the capital zoning jurisdiction. And so the way it's set up, you can't get a permit to do anything from the city until you get a permit from the capital zoning. So and a lot of people don't realize, and a lot of realtors, they're supposed to tell people when they buy a house in the capital zoning district or the mansion area district that you have to have, you're under jurisdiction of the zoning area. And a lot of people don't realize that, and it does cause some problems at times. And the staff is small at the district commission, and so sometimes things get done, and then they come in and they say after the fact. It's not fun sometimes, I can tell you. You really do need to explore everything before you either buy or before you start the project, because you will run into those things. Now, I had owned these two houses on Broadway for several years, and just one day I was going to do them, Well, the day finally came that I was going to do them. And one of them, the foundation was much worse than I ever thought it would be. I mean, it was really a mess. And when you get into foundation problems, of course, you've got to meet the codes, all the standard codes, and we had to do a lot of that kind of work to get that thing straightened out. And it is, and sometimes we had to hire an engineer, in fact, because they had to override what some of the city inspectors required. In other words, we went beyond what the city inspectors required, but some of they just have a focus of one way of looking sometimes. And so if you get a certified engineer, then that will override their decisions in some instances. And there is a problem on insulating and siding and windows, and it can be a daunting thing, particularly in some of these districts where these things are required. That is a real problem, because young people want to do these things. Young people usually don't have a lot of money. And older people may have the money, but they don't want to do it. I mean, they so it's a real problem. And
well, we let the young people do it when we moved in.
Well, that's right, you did, didn't you, Tom? But we are in the second generation level down here, and that's good. But things have really changed a lot, and for the better. But there's still a lot of problems, and you're right. There are things that come up that you have to deal with it, and that's another thing too. It's the level of restoration that you want to do, and what you've decided to do sometimes is beyond the scope of ordinary living. I hate to say it, but it is.
From our experience, flexibility has probably been the most important thing that the most important skill that we've brought to and probably even learned throughout the process. I mean, we originally thought we would move into that, we would get everything livable, and then we would move in and kind of take it a room at a time. And we were living in an apartment on Gaines Street at the time, and so we were, very comfortable, and it was we weren't very motivated to move into a house where we would be living in one room at a time. And once we really got in and realized that there were a lot of things that we were going to have to need, we were going to need to go deeper into, the 4 layers of subfloor, get down in there and actually do it right and take all of those out. We totally changed our plan, and I forgot to mention, but there's a little carriage house in the back of the lot. And we actually ended up stopping work on the house for several months and fixed up the 400 square foot garage apartment. I call it a carriage house lovingly, but it's really more of a garage apartment. It was built, I think, in the 20s, according to the Sanborn maps. And that's been the best idea ever. I think we probably, I really resisted that at first because I didn't want to live in 400 square feet, but it's turned out to be a really wonderful thing to be on the property and, much more of a motivation to get into the house than probably living somewhere else and working on the house at the same time. And we've been really lucky that we can kind of take our time with this too and be flexible and kind of change our minds several different times and do and redo. And
Yeah, that move allowed us to totally redo the electrical work, beginning to end instead of piecemeal, totally redoing the plumbing in the house. Every bit of pipe and drain line is being replaced. Things like that would have been really hard to do if we were trying to live in the house while we're working on it. Not to mention sheetrock dust getting in the bed and all that stuff. I've talked to people who have lived in a house while they're renovating it, and from the stories I've heard, I wouldn't recommend it. But some people have to do it that way, and if that's what it takes, then by all means, go for it. But if there's any way to avoid that, I think it's a good thing. Some people might be able to speak to that.
Well, now, Donna, tell us how you approach a house, because you're in it to sell it, to make
Right.
money. So tell us how you approach
Well,
your projects and things.
when I purchase a house, I go in and I try to see what's wrong with everything. I crawl underneath. I never look at the plumbing or the electrical because that has to be replaced. If you think you're going to be able to just salvage plumbing or salvage electrical, you're better off just to know that you're going to replace it all. So put that in your budget to replace everything as far as heating and air, roof, plumbing, and electrical. If you don't have to, that's just money that you can save for other projects that you're not expecting. I crawl underneath, I take a hammer with me, I hit the beams with a hammer. If your hammer goes into the beam, you know you have termite damage or water damage. The way I tell the difference between termite and water damage is what's above me. If it's a toilet, it's probably water damage. If there's nothing up there, it's termite damage. Also, you can, if you break into a board and you see the termites, that's another good idea, good clue that you have termites. So that'll save you right there of ripping out a subfloor and saying, oh my gosh, all these beams are rotten. So you can crawl under there and do that beforehand. As far as lead paint and asbestos, a lot of times the siding is asbestos. I haven't ran into that. Everything I have is wood. Lead-based paint, I just don't disturb it. And if I do, you have to take them. There's measures you have to take in order to get rid of that. And that's something as far as plan on there being lead-based paint that you have to remove. And if you can just not disturb it and say your doors are in good shape, you can just repaint it. But put that into your budget. And if you don't have to do it, bonus. Use it on something else that you weren't expecting, again.
Now let me ask you a question. Do you do your own painting?
Yes, I do.
And do you have to train some people to take the lead course or whatever the thing
Yes.
for abatement on
Yes,
that?
you have
Okay.
to. And they offer courses.
Yeah.
At Kaufman, or at the paint store, they always
Yeah.
have when the next course is available to take. What was the rest of your question? How do you plan for the unplannable? You don't. You put it into your budget. That's all I can say is if you're planning on spending $40,000, you better up that to $75,000. And then whatever's less than that, bonus in your pocket. But, and how I save most of my money is I do almost all of the work myself. I refinish the hardwood floors. I've learned little tricks on how to make it all look the same. You cannot purchase old wood for floors. So what I did in my last house is the bathroom floor was rotten. So I had to rip that floor up. I saved all that hardwood from the bathroom and I repaired the rest of the house with it. So find little tricks to save yourself money, like hardwood flooring. You just can't find wood to match the wood from 1900. So find it somewhere else in the house that you're putting tile in, use it in the other part of the house. And research, plan, like you say. You can always find stuff cheaper on another website. So research until you find what you believe is the lowest price, and you can order stuff way cheaper than you can go buy it in the store.
I find it difficult to find. I've had, like I started out 40-something years ago, and there were people that could do a lot more back then than they can now. They're more familiar now with restoration, but I could use their, they didn't know they were from the 20s and 30s and 40s, really. The workmen I had when I first started, and they knew how to use a hand saw and make these good cuts and all this kind of thing. And then there were mill shop people in town, and I could go and have moldings made and things that I needed. Now that's all changed, and it is very difficult to get a lot of those kind of things done. Everybody wants to use a chop saw or this kind of saw or that, and you have to use a lot of putty nowadays.
Do you have a specific, a specific part of it?
Cutting, the original molding,
Yeah.
the stenciling, things of that nature. That seems to be a lost art these days.
It's not a lost. Anything that was ever made can be made again, and even wood you can find it, but it's going to cost you some money. There's
You
no
can
question
get
about it.
all that wood milled, but you can also find, I piece stuff together to
Yeah.
make it look old. So I take a piece of chair railing with a 1x10, or you can do different things to get the effect that you want with current stuff that's not as expensive. The third house, I was ripping out the kitchen. I just decided to gut the entire kitchen. And when I took all the walls and ceilings out, I realized that they had moved a load-bearing wall 4 feet over so that they could make the kitchen a little bigger. And they are very fortunate that nobody ever came crashing down because it's held together by a couple of nails. That wall's not there to hold it up. They'd moved it over because they needed a wet bar in their kitchen. So that one was pretty alarming. I'm thinking, I am so glad I ripped out that ceiling that they had put up so that I could find that they had moved the load-bearing wall and I can move it back to where it needs to be.
What did you do? You just scabbed onto it and...
They had just put up sheetrock. They had ripped down the plaster and put up sheetrock. So you couldn't see the rafters to the second floor, or the joists. When they remodeled, they just moved the wall over. I don't know if they didn't realize they were moving a load-bearing wall, or if they did it thinking, it'll be okay, that these nails will hold these spans together. But I'm not real sure why they did what they did. Oh, I'm sure I know. They wanted a wet bar in their kitchen. But that could have been really disastrous had I not completely gutted the kitchen.
Well, I'm not surprised at anything really, because I've seen everything, and these houses generally are overbuilt, and of course they did in the course of the aging of the house and different needs of families. They did just cut through everything, and it's a wonder they didn't collapse a lot of times when you get in there and look to see just what. There's not anything holding it up a lot of times. And so that's a bad situation. Then, of course, fires are bad situations, and termites are really bad situations, too. When they go clear to the attic and things like that, you have to replace all these things. And then the construction of the houses, some are constructed better than others, from the beginning. And it's interesting. I mean, they say the old craftsmen or the old this and that. Well, a lot of them weren't any good either.
I can say that we have not documented well enough. I mean, I thought that I was taking a million pictures, but I go back and I think, I want a picture of this. And it wasn't that there was historic fabric that we took out, but just I want to compare, to see where we've come. But we went into it thinking that we were going to, or with the idea that we were doing a tax credit project, a state tax credit project. And we definitely had all of the documentation that we needed to do that. That requires, in that mindset, I was thinking of, these are the things that we're going to do, these are the steps that we need to take, and these are the things we need to document. So I think, we have a lot of shots of details of woodwork, but not a lot of shots of rooms before they were rehabbed. We were, I guess, unfortunate that we really didn't have a lot of historic fabric in the interior. We had the popcorn ceilings with glitter in it. There was no beautiful plaster work or anything like that remaining. So as far as documentation, we came to it thinking of, tax credit and just to make ourselves feel great about it, to keep the morale up.
I can tell you, I do a terrible job of documentation. The first house, I was asked for old photos, and I said, "Oh yeah, I got a ton of them." And so I gave him the little disc, and there's 5 photos. I said, "Where did all the photos go?" Well, I must not have taken any. It really felt like I did, but I must not have. But then, like y'all, the tax credits make you. I didn't know about the tax credits on the first one I did. So in the second house, I knew about them. Therefore, there's a lot more before pictures and during pictures. But as far as like fabrics and all that, everything that was original to the house is still in there for my house. So if I wanted a picture now, I could still go take it. So.
Something I've thought about, and next time I think I'd like to try this, photographers need work. So you could probably pay a photographer $50 or $100 and have them come in one day, shoot everything, have them come in 6 months later, shoot everything again. I think you could end up with some really high quality documentation that way.
Yeah. Or you could do that party, but give everybody like video weddings.
Everybody a camera?
Saver camera, yeah.
I like that idea.
It's a great idea. Way cheaper than the photographer.
Yeah. And we will have a session later in the summer specifically on tax credits, and we'll talk about that later. So I'll invite you to come back, same time, same place. And I would encourage you all to head over to Copper Grill right now and have a nice dinner and keep talking about preservation. Thanks.